Native Americans would have been the first to come upon the cave in prehistoric times. It would have made an ideal hunting shelter, being very near the Boyce Halfway River. It also happens to be just 2 miles away from the Housatonic River, a major trade artery linking various tribes across the region. Although the presence of the cave was likely known since colonial times, it wasn't until about 1820 when it was first exploited. Locals began extracting marble, which was roasted in a kiln and sold as lime for fertilizer. Since there are few marble outcrops in the area, the cave would have been considered particularly valuable. However, this venture was abandoned when the lime turned out to be poor quality. Years passed, and the cave was seemingly forgotten. But who was the first person to fully explore its depths? It is not known for sure, but a local tradition has it that a hired hand named Sharp tied together 4 cart ropes, each 100 feet in length. He crawled deep into the cave and continued until all 400 feet of his makeshift guideline ran out. Just what he witnessed on his exploration that day has been lost to history. It wasn't until some years later that a local farmer named Henry Plum came upon the cave and explored it to a distance of about 60 feet. He kept his find secret, and in August of 1886 bought the land containing the cave. But Plum had a different plan for the cave. He was not interested in mining the marble, but rather in its potential as a tourist attraction. In the late 1800s, leisure and recreation were an important part of Victorian life. Summertime brought tourists from the sweltering, acrid streets of New York City to nearby Connecticut aboard steam locomotives. Any and all points of interest were exploited for entertainment value. It was these vacationers who Plum planned to attract with his marble cave. But first, he had some work to do. Immediately after purchasing the land, Plum hired workmen to dig out dirt and sand that had accumulated in the underground passageways. By October of 1886, they had unearthed a long tunnel leading to a room with high ceilings measuring 30 by 40 feet square. An underground space of this size would surpass the water-carved rooms of even the largest known caves in New England. As the legend goes, the room was named the King's Ballroom and was big enough to hold 75 people. Certainly an incredible discovery for southern Connecticut, an area with very few caves. According to a New York Times article dated October 17, 1886, the diggers discovered not just the large room, but several other tunnels. One such tunnel led back about 40 feet to a spring-fed underground stream. By February of 1887, Plum was convinced that the cave would prove to be the biggest wonder in New England. The Housatonic Valley Railroad now ran within a mile of the cave. Plum built a trail for omnibuses to carry tourists in from the railroad. He called his site Wildwood and developed the surrounding land into a park and dammed the river to create a wading pool. By April of 1887, the diggers were still clearing new passageways in his cave, and it seemed he was destined for success. But Plum was certainly not the first to capitalize on the idea of a tour cave. In the 1870s, the Salisbury Cave in northern Connecticut was one of only 3 commercial tour caves in America. Here, a mere 10 cents would buy entrance into the cave. Oilcloth suit and candle included. Like Plum's cave, a maze of water-carved tunnels led deep into a strange underground world. A world that few at that time had ever seen. Water eroded the soluble marble rock, leaving a network of low tunnels, connecting a series of rooms just tall enough to stand. The Salisbury Cave, later known as the Twin Lakes Cave, is to this day one of the largest known caves in New England. Because of this, one would assume the state of Connecticut is filled with solution caves. But this is not the case. There are hundreds of jumbled rock caves and cliff overhangs, but surprisingly, very few true solution caves. And even these rare few are limited to the northwestern hills of the state. This is what makes the story of this cave so unique. Not only was Plum's cave supposedly very large and very beautiful, but it was also in an area not known to have caves at all. The cave never did become the huge success Plum hoped it would be. By the 1890s, amusement parks became all the rage. Visitors stopped coming to Wildwood. Its popularity faded until Plum finally closed it down. The site reverted back to the forest, and the entrances became obscured. In the late 1960s, the cave was deemed to be too dangerous by the nuns that owned the property at the time. The Army Corps of Engineers stepped in to close the cave once and for all. Holes were drilled deep into the rock. Dynamite was inserted, and then detonated. The cave, that was once the shelter for Native Americans, worked hard by miners, and visited by curious vacationers, was now sealed to the outside world. Yet its legend still lingered. In 2017, I was invited to help rediscover this lost cave. A small but dedicated group was assembled by local historian Marvin Moss, including the new landowner. Early in the spring, Marvin and I reconnoitered the site. Since no obvious entrance could be found, I started to look for drill holes where the dynamite was inserted for blasting. It wasn't long before I found the telltale holes. We were determined as ever to enter and explore the cave. We knew we were very close. All we needed to do now was dig.